What's good, everyone on YouTube? This is Very Melon Man, and welcome back to my Best Skyrim PlayStation Mods series, where we cover essential mods you can now use on your PlayStation copy of Skyrim Special Edition. So, I decided to focus on perk overhauls for this episode because now you've changed up how you interact with your game, you're going to want to change how you play the game. And perks are the most important part of how you play through Skyrim. Bar none, they cover every possible playstyle you can manage, and therefore it's important to make sure you know what all of your new options are if you want to change what kind of mod list you use going forward. So, let's just start with the biggest one on the list. Ordinator, Perks of Skyrim by N.I.C.A.on. This is the classic old but goodness. Ordinator overhauls the perk trees of Skyrim to increase the depth and fun of character building. It is highly compatible with other mods and uses lightweight and clean scripting. Featuring all new perk trees for a total of 469 new perks. Enables many new viable character builds. Highly compatible, lightweight scripts, no save load, and can be solved during your playthrough. So, what does this necessarily mean? The best way to put it is that N.I.C.A.on's Ordinator will enable you to play Skyrim in ways you never really could play before with the systems in place in the vanilla game. So, for example, you really couldn't, I guess the most important thing to say is that both the melee combat system and the magic combat systems were lacking in depth in both their own ways. The magic system came off even worse than the combat system because you can actually make the melee combat fun in general for yourself. But magic in this game is very difficult to play around with if you're just trying to play the game normally, without stopping the grind. What Ordinator does is basically rehauls each skill tree to allow each skill tree to feel like its own playstyle. If you want to play a warrior that uses two-handed war hammers, or two-handed war axes rather, then there's an entire tree perfectly dedicated to improving and making the warhammer play differently from the war axe. Great swords play differently from maces, etc. The weapon types you use in the game now actually will feel like different weapon types instead of just reskins of each other. And while the vanilla skill tree attempted to do this, the differences between how the three weapon types played was not significant enough even with the vanilla's one-handed and two-handed combat trees for it to really feel all that distinct. And on magic, you only had 2 perks that boosted magical elemental damage, period, across the entire destruction tree. And it just doesn't help you out at all. Magic just feels really weak and powerless, especially if you want to play with ice magic, because you're playing in a game that's mostly Nords, so everything takes half damage from your ice magic. But Ordinator will now basically give every elemental mage damage type its own playstyle. So you don't have to, you don't need to dip into other types of magic just to make your one chosen elemental type viable. You can play entirely with nothing but illusion, conjuration, destruction, and it's gonna be pretty badass. Same with basically all of them. Oh, and you can actually play an actual unarmed character now. There's no perk tree whatsoever to boost for an actual fisticuffs, hand-to-hand combatant in vanilla Skyrim. Ordinator changed that completely. Ordinator also enables you to use brand new playstyles as well. You can play as a character that creates booby traps inside dungeons so that characters that the foes you fight can run into them and take massive trap damage. You can play a bard, on the other hand, and just debilitate and control the battlefield by using your magical songs and dances. Beforehand, you had to pretend to be a bard character by using illusion magic, but now you can just play a bard by going into the speech tree alone. And you can even play a tonal architect by going to the smithing skill tree and investing in perks related to the construction of Dwemer cannons. It's pretty cool, honestly. It's just the new types of builds this one perk overhaul enables is why it's my favorite one out of all the perk overhauls I'm going to be showing you today. And the only real problem with it is that it hard forces you to commit to a skill tree. So if you want to invest in other skill trees, you're going to have to pair it with the Ordinator 50% more perk points mod if you want to do other stuff. Otherwise, you're not going to have a lot of room. Otherwise, the only other way you're going to get the basically, the main thing about Ordinator is that you will need some other mod to increase the amount of perk points you will need in order to fully get the most out of whatever build that will involve going into multiple skill trees that you want. But years later, it's a very high quality mod still, and even though it's not going to be to everyone's taste, there's a very good reason that this was so popular and still remains popular to use this day. But we're not just here to show you one new perk mod. It's time for an alternative. And that's where Adamant. Adamant, a perk overhaul by Simon Magus. Now, this used to be on PlayStation, but Simon Magus took off all of his mods originally out of protests for Bethesda and their paid mod system. However, he was allowed permission for his mods to be ported back on the PlayStation after a new method of doing so was discovered. So now we have Adamant again. Adamant is a complete overhaul of Skyrim's perk tree designed to balance existing skills and add powerful new perks to the game. It thoroughly overhauls the game's skill tree in order to provide the player with compelling choices and smooth progression from start to finish. While Adamant does increase the total number of perks in the game by a small amount, it avoids bloat, sprawl, and power creep by balancing its selection of perks around vanilla perk gains. The main modern perk overhauls provide support for popular gameplay styles that are underutilized in the vanilla game, such as shouts, staves, and unarmed combat. So, basically, Adamant is... The best way to describe Adamant is that it takes what was intended by developers using the vanilla perk tree and really streamlines it to remove perks that were either too high up in the perk tree to be worth investing in, and unlocks certain mechanics that were gated behind the perk trees to begin with, such as dual casting spells and diagonal directional power attacks. This way, you get the most important systems you need to play the game right off the bat, and can only improve those systems by going deeper into a perk tree. Another thing I should really explain is that with Adamant, you're basically not going to feel any stronger than you actually were in vanilla. So with Ordinator, you can get really powerful compared to what you could get in the vanilla game, due to the way the perks not only change the way getting damage works, but due to the way each perk tree adds a new system for you to utilize in addition to whatever previous perks you were getting. They build on top of one another to unlock and deepen a particular playstyle, but this in turn means that playstyle will make you inherently more powerful than what the equivalent vanilla playstyle would have been like in Skyrim. A frost damage mage, like I said, is going to be inherently more powerful with Ordinator than they ever would have been with the vanilla Skyrim system. What Adamant will do is instead take those pre-existing systems and just streamline them. They'll allow you to make them work, but they'll keep the curve, they'll keep how much damage you can do to the enemies lower to make sure they match vanilla values. And with that in mind, the best way to describe Adamant specifically is that it refines. Well, Adamant and Ordinator are two sides of the opposite coin. Ordinator adds many new systems to the game in a true fashion to overhaul and greatly expand on the capabilities of the player within Skyrim. But what Adamant does is streamline and pare down, even rearranging skill trees outright in order to make sure that while the player character won't grow more powerful than they did in vanilla, they'll have a much more comfortable time playing the game and raising the skills they want to raise if they want to stay within the confines of what vanilla Skyrim was intended to feel like. Basically, the purpose of Adamant and the rest of Simon Max's mods by extension is to make you forget that you installed a mod to begin with. You won't be able to tell if you're actually using a mod if you play with Adamant, whereas you will definitely know for sure if you're playing with Ordinator. Basically, Adamant stays as close to vanilla as possible, while Ordinator strays as far from vanilla as possible. Two different extremes that, in my opinion, are still very equal in terms of quality. So you can't go wrong with either one depending on your taste. But what if your taste is somewhere in the middle? Not one extreme or the other. And for that, there's one solution. Vokrii, minimalistic perks of Skyrim. So, Vokrii is what... There's a term for mods like Vokrii, and it's Vanilla Plus. Vokrii is a lightweight Vanilla Plus perk overhaul that improves build diversity, but respects the vanilla version and balance of the original version of Skyrim. Vokrii overhauls perk trees to give you 267 new perks. It's very much closer to vanilla than the rest of NIC Aeon's other perk overhaul. Sorry, I'm stuttering my words here for a bit. I'm really sorry about that. The new perks are aimed at making a wide variety of builds without risking your player character becoming too powerful for the vanilla game. So the best way to describe Vokrii is right down the middle, in between the extremes of Ordinator and Adamant. If Ordinator's too much for you in terms of power and scope, but if Adamant is too much of the same you already got in vanilla to begin with, then Vokrii will give you the best of both worlds. You will be able to feel yourself having more diverse builds than you normally could beforehand, but you will not be in a position where you feel like you're not actually playing with a new version of Skyrim's perk overhaul. Vokrii even contains perks. Vokrii isn't just Ordinator pared down. Vokrii has its own new perks, and because of that, playing with just Ordinator or just Vokrii will provide their own experiences compared to one another. I don't really know how to describe, but one thing about NIC Aeon's mods is that he loves giving you the ability. Well, okay. One thing about this fact is that because Vokrii is the in-between extreme of Vokrii being in between these extremes means that there are perks in Vokrii that would actually be not too out of place within Ordinator itself. Vokrii is just toned down Ordinator for some people. Not to all people, and don't mean to throw any shade at Vokrii. But there are perks in Vokrii I like to use in Ordinator because personally I prefer Ordinator. So what's the solution for someone like me who wants to keep using Ordinator but would rather have some of those perks in Vokrii as well? And let's see. All right. No choice but to do this. Vokriinator. This is not created by NICM, rather by KV4 and Corpselayer. So Vokrii is infamous for, you know, just being not just the original mod. Vokriinator is the big one. It is basically Vokrii and Ordinator, like it said. But the reason it's so insane is because it's basically an attempt to integrate every popular mod overhaul into one giant thing for the player character at their discretion. If you're going to use Vokriinator, it's because you want one thing. Lots and lots of choice. It is truly a phenomenal mod thing. Like, this is just a PlayStation version. On PC, Vokriinator is actually Vokriinator Black. And instead of just requiring Vokrii and Ordinator, it also requires Mysticism, Adamant, Half of Sorcery, and Spurg. But because Vokriinator Black would be a little too much to add, we only have the base Vokriinator mod. And I'm perfectly fine with that, because I'm perfectly happy with just Vokrii and Ordinator. But what if you did want to use all three of these mod overhauls together? And that is where you get the biggest Perk Overhaul available on PlayStation right now, Vokriinator, which is Vokriinator Black, but under a different name, and only requiring Mysticism, Adamant, Ordinator, and Vokrii. Well, actually, it doesn't seem to require Adamant at all. Well, okay. Mysticism requires Adamant as a hard requirement. You can't use Mysticism without Adamant and vice versa. So, for all intents and purposes, you do require Adamant to use Vokriinator. And the other thing then there's really nothing left for me to say. You've heard me talk about Ordinator, Adamant, and Vokrii. You've heard me talk about all of their appeals. This is just all of those perks from those three trees in one thing for you. And it's up to you if you want to use this. Because at this point, it's less about what perk overhaul you want and what other mods from NICM or Simon Magus that you want to use. And in the spirit of that, my next video will be covering both. I'll be making two videos next time. One to cover NICM mods, and the other to cover Simon Magus mods. This is Barry Mellowman, signing off. Have a good day, and happy Skyrim mods.